You're doing it to God. And that should completely change the way we serve. And if we're not serving, my prayer today is that will motivate us just to begin serving. But if we don't, if we choose not to serve, what's the consequence? The consequence is in our final set of verses 41 through 46. Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They will also answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, a stranger and needing clothes, or sick or in prison, and didn't help you?" He will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Film line number 3. The goats on the left will be undone. Come, son, undone. Goats on the left will be undone. Can you imagine the guilt of all those wasted opportunities to serve God and have eternity to think about the fact that we didn't take the opportunity when it was given to us. Now, some of you might be sitting here very uncomfortably thinking, "Now wait a minute, Todd. What about ABC? What about when we make that prayer? What about when you give an invitation and you say, admit you're a sinner, believe Jesus is who he said he is, commit your life to Christ?" I thought that's what gets me to heaven, Todd. Come on, what's going on? Now, I want to be very careful here. The beginning of your relationship is important. In fact, it's essential. But that does not complete the relationship. If I can break it down. Do I have anyone here who has ever built a house? Anybody here in the building trade? Anybody ever helped build a house or anything like that? Okay. You're commissioned to build a house. And so you go and you dig out a nice foundation. You lay some nice brick, you pour some concrete in the basement. And then you call the owner and you say, "Okay, house is done. Come take a look at it." And they show up and they see this hole. Will you have a happy customer? Well, they go, "Oh, thank you. This is perfect. This is just what I wanted." Do you have any gardeners here? Are there any gardeners in the house? If you go out in the spring and get that tiller going and break up the soil, break it all up, make it nice, and then let it set. Just let it set. You've tilled up the soil. You've done what you need to do to get that garden started. But then you let it set. How many vegetables will you have come midsummer? How much of a harvest will you have? How much will you be canning and freezing come fall? How about nothing? Now it's important that you go out and till. But if you don't plant something, if you don't do a little weeding, what's going to be left? How many football fans? Any football fans here? All right. I see you guys. You're back there. You're football fans. What if you go to the game on Friday night? You bought your ticket. You walk in, and you see these two teams, all suited up, all practiced up, all juiced up and ready for a great game. And the clock runs down, and they just stand there. They never come out on the field. They just stand there and watch the clock. First quarter, second quarter. At what point do you think there would be a riot at any one of our good Wayne County schools? Get out on the field. What's going on? Why aren't they engaging? Why didn't they get in the game when the game was to be played? If I can make it even closer, even more personal, because we talk about a Jesus who talks about being born again. There's a few mothers in the crowd. How many mothers in the crowd had that baby? And after they had that baby and had that marvelous experience of giving birth, and it was work, and it was important, and I'm so glad that my mom went through that experience. But what if that mom would take that baby over to the side and say, well, he was born, that's it. We're just going to set him over there now. The hard work is done. Now I'm going to leave it up to someone else. Or I'm just going to leave it up to the Lord to take care of that little baby. Why, we wouldn't call that mothering, would we? The job just began. It's important that you have a foundation. And that foundation be good. It's important that you break up the soil and prepare your garden. It's important that you football players practice and get ready. It's important that you have that baby, but that's not where it ends. And that's one of the reasons I'm in the Mennonite church. Because while it's important to have altar calls, and it's important to make decisions for Christ, it's also important to keep building on that foundation. 20th century Christianity was big on the beginning. 20th century Christianity was big on the invitation and the televangelist that you can accept Jesus right through your TV. But what's next? 21st century Christianity is screaming, but what's next? Where's the change? What do we do now? How do we live out the Christian life? We must remember the initial call and commitment to Jesus is imperative. But you were not saved to sit. You were saved to serve. And in our text today, we see beautiful, beautiful applications as to how we do that. But let me just narrow it down. Does anybody remember last week's sermon at all? Maybe a little bit. Does anybody remember why the servant who had the one talent was out of luck? When it came time, does anybody remember why the servant couldn't do anything to help himself? What happened? He buried it. And then what happened after he buried it? Who came home? Master came home and said, where's my interest? What'd you do with it? In the same way, the shepherd hasn't started sorting. The judgment day hasn't come yet. And so there is still time to build on your foundation. Indeed, to begin serving. No matter what the Jehovah's Witnesses believe, Jesus came back in 1914. He didn't come back. And so we are still in verses 31 to 34. That hasn't happened yet. And there's still hope today for you if you feel sitting here like a guilty goat. You can still go through a marvelous change. I can't even imagine. I've seen caterpillars turn into butterflies. I can only imagine what a beautiful change it would be for a goat to turn into a sheep. Are you a guilty goat this morning? Can you run down to that roster of things that is listed there and go, wow, I don't think I've served any. I think I'm standing on the sidelines. Get in the game. Plant the seed. Build on the foundation.